to everyone. The 5 members of the press that are present, it's really good to have you. Because to us at MiRiDom Minority Rights Dominica, this is an important day. It is the day that the case that we are working on, been working on for the last 4.5, 5 years, is being launched, is being registered in the courts of Dominica. And that is a challenge to the Section 14 and Section 16 of the Sexual Offences Act of Dominica. And these are the ones that deal with buggery, and the other one deals with the Gross Indecency Act. Okay? And we feel that those 2 laws really impede on people's rights to sexual expression. And when we look at it on a human rights basis, it is really wrong. So after years of consultation with various professionals around the world, including the United Nations, the various groups, the legal authorities within the Caribbean, we think that we have a case to bring forward, and we bring the case forward to the courts of Dominica, because we think that it affects everyone, even those who feel that they are not a part of the system, but somewhere along the line, your family, your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your acquaintances will be affected by that law, and you will feel that you have not done right by them, so you're trying to do right, so that we could have a more equal society. Okay? I will not hold you very much longer, and I will just call Maurice Tomlinson, who is the legal advisor, and also the person who is going to be coordinating the case that is being brought to the courts of Dominica.
Thank you very much, Darrell. And my name is Maurice Tomlinson. I'm a senior policy analyst with the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network. I live in Canada, but I am from the Caribbean, and I am working specifically on challenging laws and policies which inhibit the HIV response within the Caribbean. And we know that the Caribbean has the 2nd highest HIV prevalence rate after sub-Saharan Africa. And UNAIDS and other agencies, including PANCAP, have identified that laws such as Sections 14 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act drive the HIV epidemic because they force members of the LGBT community away from effective HIV prevention, treatment, and care interventions. So one effect of that, for example, is that men who have sex with men in Dominica have a disproportionately higher HIV prevalence rate, nearly 26%, than the general population, because they are unable to freely access prevention, treatment, care, and support interventions. The challenge we are bringing today is being brought by Dominica. We are supporting it. We're very proud to support this claim. And the Dominican has asked that his identity be suppressed, so we are applying for a gag order. And this is because this very small society of Dominica, he feels, will impede his ability to move about freely without any kind of interference while this case is working its way through the courts. So in addition to the claim, we're also going to be asking for a gag order to prevent his identity from being revealed. I would like to read a statement from the claimant, who is not able to join us today for obvious reasons, on why he feels that this case is necessary and why he has decided to bring it. And for the members of the press who are here, we're proud to see you here in support of getting this word out. The statement is actually found in the packages which are handed to you. And these are the words of the claimant. As an openly gay man in Dominica, I fear for myself and for others who are part of the LGBT community in Dominica. Throughout my life in Dominica, I have endured discrimination, threats, harassment, and violence because of my sexual orientation. The perpetrators of such acts find a sense of comfort and safety in the laws that criminalize buggery and gross indecency. These are sections 14 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act. These laws mean that we live with the threat of criminal sanction for engaging in consensual sexual activity, but their effects extend far beyond the direct impact. These laws are not only discriminatory themselves, but they incite and encourage hateful and violent conduct towards LGBT individuals. The laws also condone police discrimination and inaction against such acts of harassment and violence. Fear and concern for my safety have been a constant pattern in my life, as they have been for many LGBT people. Although I am Dominican by birth and blood, I've always been treated as an outcast from my own society and country. No one deserves to feel afraid for simply existing. No one deserves to walk down the street and face harassment and abuse for who they are. Like me, people of the LGBT community are devoted and committed members of the Dominican society. We are also friends and family members, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters. I am challenging sections 14 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act because these laws not only directly violate various constitutional rights, but also incite many other violations I and other LGBT Dominicans experience. They must be changed to ensure that all Dominicans feel welcome and comfortable in their own country. The repeal of sections 14 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act is a necessary step to ensuring the human rights of Dominica's LGBT community, ostensibly guaranteed under our Constitution, and that these rights are protected. I hope to see a future where younger generations are free to be who they are without worrying when they will be harassed next. I want to live in a Dominica where I and other members of the LGBT community feel protected and secure, free to live our lives without discrimination, harassment, threats, and violence. Now, as I mentioned, I am a Caribbean national. I'm a Jamaican, and I am also challenging the laws in my own country which criminalize same-sex intimacy. And the work I lead in the Caribbean is to repeal as many of these laws as we can through the courts, because we realize that the parliaments are unwilling to take up this issue because of various political reasons.
You've said that you have gone to the courts. Is it because discussions with the government have failed? Is that what has really prompted you to enter the courts at this moment?
Well, yes, because we have had meetings, one meeting with the cabinet of Dominica, and also some utterances by the government through various media of how they're going to treat the matter. And to all intents and purposes, our Prime Minister has told the nation that will not happen under his watch. I've been to the cabinet, and in discussion with the cabinet, I found out that the people who were present understood the situation and what we were dealing with. But I was reminded that they were politicians, and they had to deal with their constituents and what was popular. And I was invited to go out to speak with the people to try to change their minds. But they have to be elected by the general public, and they changing a law like that, that will be unpopular, will not suit their purpose. So in other words, is leadership by what is popular, not necessarily by what is right. So that was an invitation to go out to find ways of getting these laws repealed without making the government look bad or anybody else.
It is one. But as you move around Dominica, Mr. Philip, what sort of feedback are you getting from the Dominican public on this matter?
That's an interesting question. Some 5 years ago when we came out with this, I mean, it was the sky is going to fall and hell and brimstone and everything like that. But now people are beginning to be a little more reasonable. I am not saying that the majority understands the situation and is willing to have the laws repealed. But again, that's what Minority Rights Dominica stands for, the representation of a minority. And if we have to wait till the majority agrees with a minority, it will never happen. So we have to go forward with it at some point. We just have to know that we have a case and we are right with what we're doing, and have some form of conviction that it will come out for the betterment of Dominica.
Mr. Philip, the laws that you want to repeal, they are essentially not being enforced.
Well, when you say essentially, are you telling me that they're there, but if we choose to use it at any time we can, but we really don't use it?
Yeah, what I'm saying, repealing it wouldn't make much of a difference.
At least it is a fuel that makes people feel that they have rights over people who are LGBT. So once that fuel is removed, then we can start another discussion. We could start having the moral discussion, is it right? But before that, it is against the law. Okay? And right now, that's how we stand. It is against the law.
Some people, how homophobic would you say in society, the Dominican society?
Quite.
It's quite.
I mean, people try not to talk about it, and people almost sweep it under the carpets. But I've known fathers who have refused to pay the college tuition for their children, for their sons, because they found out that they're homosexual. I have known families who try to ostracize their own children, telling them they have to man up, they have to change their ways. People are bullied in school, and when they go and they try to seek some redress from the authorities in the schools, they're being told that they have to change their ways. Okay? And you cannot do that to human being. It's like being black. If you're black, you're black. Okay? Somebody should tell you that you have to stop acting black for you to be a part of the society. It is wrong. And that's exactly what it is like.
How would you react to the Evangelical Association and their statement recently last week?
Well, as I mentioned, the evangelicals have a right to say what the Bible says. And I have a right to live a life. And so does everybody else. If what I am doing or what other people are doing does not affect you, why should you want to incarcerate me because the Bible says so? These are not the judges of man. The people who sit down and they quote the Bible, the evangelicals, they're not the final. God is the final judge. And what is the responsibility of them is to tell us what they feel like things are. But it's our responsibility to live our lives as long as we don't hamper other people. It's all of our responsibilities. And if you could tell me what is the crime of homosexuality, who does it hurt? I'll be happy to try to remove the case, but until that time, it stays, because we see it as an injustice.
Can I ask you something from the question? You mentioned what gag order, what does that entail, a gag order?
We are applying to the courts to have the identity. Something is going on. We're applying to the courts to have the identity of the claimant suppressed so that he can only be identified by a pseudonym or some other means because of the very sensitive nature of the information in the claim and also because of the very small society. So that the media will be asked to act responsibly and instructed to act responsibly and not reveal his name.
But will he appear in court?
He will be represented by his lawyer in court.
Having gone to court this morning, what is the next step? Do you have a date when you have to return? What's the next step?
So the next step with these kinds of matters is that we have to have what is called a case management conference. And at that point, the court will set a series of, make a series of orders, such as when the government must file its defense and when we will appear again to provide what evidence we're relying on, what evidence they rely on. So it will take a little while to work through the system.
In other words, how far do you want the court to go if they're to grant you what you're looking for?
It's a very simple claim, really. The law, we say, violates several rights, including the right to privacy and liberty of consenting persons, right? We're not talking about children. We're talking about adults and consenting persons. Allowing those consenting individuals to engage in their acts of intimacy will require that sections 14 and 16 that deal with gross indecency and buggery be read down so they do no longer apply to consenting adults or persons over the age of consent in Dominica. Right? It does not apply to children. This case cannot touch unconcerned marriage because that's not what the laws deal with. It does not concern anything else in relation to adoption. This is about allowing people to engage in their private acts of intimacy. The law is kept for one specific reason: to discriminate and to stigmatize LGBT people. Because if the government had any intention of enforcing it, then they would. The government of Dominica has stated at international level that they know that this law contributes to discrimination. You've had the most popular denomination, religious denomination in Dominica, the Catholic Church, say that they do not support criminalization. Okay? The Catholic bishop has said this since when? 2012? So clearly there's an understanding that this law cannot be used justifiably.
This is a constitutional challenge against Sections 14 and 16 of the Sexual Offences Act of Dominica. Section 14 deals with the so-called gross indecency, which considers human sexual activity to be only a penis inserted into a vagina, and the use of any other body part for sexual arousal is prohibited, except by heterosexual couples. Section 16 prohibits buggery, or anal penetration, between any couple, gay or straight, but it has historically been used primarily against gay men. The maximum penalty is 10 years imprisonment, and there is also the possibility of forced psychiatric confinement after the release from prison. If one is considered an habitual homosexual, these sections violate multiple rights of LGBTQ Dominicans, including privacy and freedom from inhumane and degrading punishment or other treatment. The case was registered in the High Courts of Dominica on 19th July 2019 by local counsel Cara Shillingford, who is retained by an anonymous gay Dominican man living on the island and who is a member of MiRiDom. The court has ordered that the man's identity be suppressed because of the potential threats to his life for bringing this action. The Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network and their senior policy analyst, lawyer Maurice Tomlinson, is providing support for this matter. MiRiDom's approach towards the challenge is not only to win a legal battle in the courts, which would effectively make these anti-buggery laws null and void, but also to 1. Create public awareness of the ongoing indignities suffered by the LGBTQ communities, and 2. To improve on the skills of the LGBT communities to advocate for themselves. Through our public awareness program, which included op-eds, radio and TV presentations, as well as social and media campaigns, we have been able to create some positive social discussion. When we first started, there was a sense that the LGBTQ advocacy work was a joke and that the society would never accept it, and that we should be ashamed of ourselves for bringing this topic to the public. Then slowly, we began to see a shift in public opinion, and reasoned debate on the matter has developed in the media. Dominican society no longer seems stuck on rejecting decriminalization of consensual same-sex intimacy because the Bible says so. Another initiative that we developed in support of the case was a series of public workshops. Through these presentations, held under the theme Rights, Laws, Beliefs, we looked at how the three work together to create a harmonious society. This program was funded by the Canadian Fund for Local Initiatives, but was cut short due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope to complete this program in the future. As part of the project, we were also able to have MiRiDom Inc. legally registered as a not-for-profit organization in the Commonwealth of Dominica. This will ensure greater stability in our ongoing advocacy efforts. With funds from the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities, CVC, we were also able to introduce a program called Personal Development, where we sought to enhance the skills of the general community with a focus on LGBT communities in the area of various professional and social skills. These included customer relations, leadership, communication, negotiating safer sex, which was done with sex workers, and the importance of HIV drug adherence, which was done with the people living with HIV on the island. Each of these sessions were mixed with HIV prevention education. On the legal side, as discussed above, the lawyer was able to get the judge to withhold the name of the individual in whose name the case was registered. The first case management hearing was to be held in December 2019, but the judge informed us that she was scheduled to be transferred to another jurisdiction and that the case would be handed to another judge. Another case management was scheduled for June 24, 2020, but at that hearing, we were again advised that the matter was postponed this time until 21st July 2020, which is in 2 days' time. We hope that the matter will finally proceed then. The government has engaged Anthony Astafan QC to be their lawyer on the case, and so far, the only defense that the government has filed is an affidavit from an Assistant Commissioner of Police stating that in recent times, the anti-sodomy law has not been enforced against consenting same-sex couples. This therefore begs the question, if the government is not enforcing the law, then why keep it on the books? Unless the reason to do so is to humiliate and stigmatize LGBTQ people. As the coordinator of MiRiDom and being the most prominent person calling for the challenge to the anti-sodomy laws in Dominica, I was invited to attend the third Global Decrim convening held in Barbados in July 2019. There I met individuals from around the world who were involved in advocating against and litigating cases to end anti-sodomy laws in their respective jurisdictions. What stuck out to me at the conference was a breakfast chat with the lawyers who had lost 2 cases in India, but on their third try they had won. I asked what was the difference in the third case that made the difference, and the response was that they had realized that in the previous cases there had been little visibility of LGBTQ people in the courts. But when the judge could see that there were LGBTQ people from all levels of society in the court showing interest in the case, then the LGBTQ community became visible. And the case became a matter of genuine social justice and equality. That is why the LGBTQ people in Dominica must be visible if we hope to gain our liberation. Understandably, this has greater immediate implications for a small island state like Dominica with 72,000 people. But the impact of this visibility is also greater as there are less degrees of separation from an LGBTQ person and other members of the society. Everyone knows someone who is a member of the LGBTQ communities. Many of us are their close friends and family members. I feel confident that the lawyer presenting this challenge is able and prepared to adequately represent the matter to the court to ensure a fair and positive ruling on this critical matter. To end, I would like to share the response from the Dominica Ambassador Vince Henderson when he was asked by the United Nations Human Rights Committee about the anti-sodomy laws in Dominica on 10th March 2020.
We have, I must say, that is not something that there's been much discussion on, publicly or privately, as far as I'm aware, in the private part, of course. But publicly, there's not been any conversation on that. I think that matter is being treated the same way as the same-sex issues being treated. It is something that people discuss privately among their friends and relatives, but publicly there's not been any conversation on that. What I would say, though, is that, and in the responses that I've submitted, that over the last 5 years, as we've said, there have not been any reports, but I take notice of the point that was made, that there there were reports were brought to the police, and the police didn't take any action. Again, the government doesn't have any knowledge of that. Having received that information, that is a matter then that requires some attention. Because while we are not at the stage where we are prepared to repeal the act that criminalizes gay sex, we are not prepared to accept the threats, intimidation, or violence against anyone in Dominica. Anyone. And that is the position of the government. So if there are matters of this nature, these matters have to be investigated and action must be taken. But as far as I'm aware, we did in fact reach out to our people at home, at the capital, to get some information. As far as we're aware, we don't have any records of those things happening. Again, perhaps for the same reason, for the fear of reprisal or whatever else may be. I would also add that there is, deliberately by the actions of the government, a move at greater tolerance. And that is reflected in our response to the HIV and AIDS treatment, people who are infected and affected, that the National HIV and AIDS Prevention Unit provides support to anyone without question. Now, I again wanted to put things in context. Dominica is a small population of 70,000. It's a big landmass compared to the other islands in our neighborhood, but it's still sparsely populated, so there are few population centers. The point is we're small. If you give me a name now, I most likely know that person or know somebody related to that person, or if you tell me where they are, I can tell. If you give me the name, I might even tell you where they're from. I mean, it's that small. And therefore, some of the things that I normally read about in these forums and some of the things that I hear, I mean, I'm saying these are our friends, relatives, and neighbors. So we don't go seeking them out. We've not used the law. We've never used the law. Nobody's been in prison because of that. And I mean, I can give you anecdotes, I mean, stories upon stories. So while the law has not been repealed, there has not been institutional discrimination against people who may be LGBTQI. There's not been any institutional action taken against them. The call for laws to discriminate, to protect against discrimination, again, that is going to be part of the overall conversation. It cannot be done in isolation. It has to be part of the overall discussion on same-sex issues. So these are some of the things that we are confronted with and we will deal with. We know there's a matter before the courts. The government will not interfere in the legal process as far as the decision of the court is concerned. But when the government is called to take action that are, of course, legal obligations, the government will have to act and determine. They can determine the extent to which we act. But we have to also recognize that we have a legal obligation if there's a law on the books to defend that law, but it's up to the courts to decide the outcome of those matters.